Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Um, in this video, we will discuss the Quran MetaData Khair version 4, our release 4 database and tables, and we will go over the informational content in the tables. The first column is the sequential ID of the every line or every word in the Quran. There are 77,444 words in the Quran by our calculation, and there's a line for every word in this table. And as we can see, if we scroll to the right, we will see the actual Arabic text for every ayah and the individual words in Uthmani script without tashkil, as well as Uthmani script with tashkil, as well as the root of every word. Most words have roots, some of them don't, such as alladina, wala, and dhalika, alif lam mim, al-fatih nuraniya don't have any roots. There is also the ayahs organized by roots as well. Wherever there is no roots, we put a dash. The informational content here is essentially, as I mentioned, every line represents one word, and there are 77,444 words, so 77,444 lines. And there are 221 columns in this table, describing various types of statistical attributes of every word and every ayah, every surah, and the letters of that word, or the letters of every word. So very detailed, comprehensive table for the Quran, alhamdulillah. The next column is the surah flags. So if I actually apply a filter and just select one and unselect the zero, then you will filter down this huge table down to only 114 lines, as you see in the lower left corner of the screen. And these 114 lines are the beginning of every surah. So you will see that we will only see all the 114 surahs in the Quran, or chapters, as well as the numbers for those surahs, and the first ayah of every surah, as well, or first verse of every surah, as well as the first word of that first verse of every surah. And this is for a quick analysis, or so that we can quickly go find out what line number, for example, a surah falls on, starts on, right? So we can do that. If I want to find Surah An-Nur, what line does it start in on? It's line 44,921 in this original table. To unfilter, you can do it in multiple ways. Either click the arrow and hit clear filter, or select the zero again, or simply just unfilter using by deselecting the filter on the top menu here under the data menu. And then to get back the arrows, you repress it again for a new filtration or search. The next column is the ayah. So this is there are 6,236 ayahs or verses in the Quran, and we can select those without redundancy or repetition if they, in other words, due to the decomposition by word, and we hit OK, and then we get at the bottom left of the table, you will see the number 6,236 rows are found. That allows me to go to the right here and just view the surah name, surah number, and the verses without tashkil, and the verses with tashkil. And obviously, the if I wanted to look at the Al-Fatiha, for example, then there are 7 verses bil-Fatiha that are listed here. Okay. The all right, and the next step is, okay, if I select, hit OK, there is a time order. This field, next column, is the time order of tanzil, or of the delivery of the verses to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ by the Prophet Jibril from Allah, often by the angel Jibril from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in time. So in other words, what is the time order of every verse and every that was delivered? So if I order those in from smallest to largest, then the first verse of that was delivered by the angel Jibril to the Prophet Muhammad is اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق, and in the Surah Al-Alaq, and here it is. Go to the left again, and the next one is so I'm gonna resort by ID so that we can go back to the original table. Okay, there we go. Okay, great. The next field is the surah by time order. So similarly, what is the tanzil or delivery order of every surah? The next field is whether the surah is Makkiyah or Madaniya. It was delivered in Mecca or Medina. So if I wanted only to see the Madaniya surah, which means delivered in Medina, after the migration of the Prophet from Mecca to Medina, we hit OK, and this entire table is filtered by this column, and we see Madaniya, just only the surahs that are Madaniya. And the next column is the position of the word in the Quran from the Quran start. Sorry, let's go back to the unfiltered state. Under data menu, unselect the filter and reselect it. Okay, the next column G is the position of the word from the start of the Quran. Again, this should be sequential, and it should be pretty much in the same order as the ID column, right? Same sequential order as the ID. But the column next to it is the reverse order of it's the order of the word from the Quran end. So starting from the end, the last word in the Quran from the end order is the first word, becomes word number 1 from the end, because it's in reverse order. And the first word in the Quran, which is Bismi, with a counter from the end, becomes the word 77,444. The next column is the position of the word from the ayah, from the start of the ayah. And so Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim has 4 words ordered as such. The next ayah starts with a reset of the counter, and we have Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahmanir Rahim Every time we start a new ayah, we reset the counter. Here, next column is the same, but is in reverse order. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismi becomes the fourth word from the end of that ayah. Here, the same, but ordered by surah. So, Al-Fatiha, the first surah in the Quran, by book order, is the Al-Fatiha, and it has 29 words, and this is the word position from the start of the surah till the end of the surah, as well as the reverse order in the next column. The next column has the position of the ayah from the start of the Quran. So ayah number 1, ayah number 2, and we keep going with Fatiha until ayah number 7, and we continue with the counter because this is across the entire Quran. What is the ayah position across the Quran? So Alif Lam Mim is ayah number 8, and then followed by ayah number 9 and 10, etc. And those are in Surah Al-Baqarah. So when I say ayah number 9 and 10, that's from the start of the Quran again. And the next verse is next column is the same, except it is the reverse order, the ayah position from the end of the Quran. So with that, what used to be the first ayah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, by this reverse order, it is the last 6236. It will have the number, I should say. It's still the first ayah, but it will have the position number 6236 relative to the end of the Quran. The next column is the position of the surah from the start of the Quran. So Surah Al-Fatiha, often, I'm so sorry, the position of the ayah from the start of the surah. So in the Fatiha, we have 7 verses ordered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. When we start a new surah, we reset the counter, and this is Alif Lam Mim, and then followed by ayah number 2 of Al-Baqarah and ayah number 3. And then column following that is the same, except it is relative, the ayah position relative to the end of the surah. So these are intended to help people kind of as they're counting to quickly find the position of any word or any ayah or any surah, either relative to the start of the Quran or the start of the surah or start of the ayah, or relative to the end of the Quran or end of the surah and end of the ayah. So very convenient columns. Later on we will have similar columns for letters, every letter of the word or ayah or surah or the Quran. In a few moments we'll go over those. The next column is the surah number in the Quran, and as I mentioned, we have 114 surahs composed of many verses each, and every verse with many words, or one or more words, I should say. The Al-Fatiha is the name of the first surah, and followed by Al-Baqarah, the second surah, etc. The next columns is the actual text of the ayats, and in the Quran, the verses of the Quran. This is the verses in Uthmani text without tashkil, without the harakat. And the next one is with the harakat. So you'll see that the harakat, which help in the pronunciation of the words, were added. The next one is the word by word listing of the every word in the Quran, without tashkil in Uthmani text again, and with tashkil in Uthmani text. And the next one, column W, is the actual root of the word. So in Arabic language, every word or most words have roots, Most of them, 99%, have roots. Some of them don't have any roots. And for those, we mark with a dash, such as alladina or wala or alif lam mim or the alif lam mim or dhalika, as an example. Searching by roots help avoid or help find a more comprehensive search of the variations of every word. So in Arabic language, a word such as Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim are both have the same root, Rahima, which means to have mercy or to be merciful, or especially merciful. So while there are variations in the pronunciation or the derivation of the words, or the form of the word, there is always a single root for all of those derivations. In the Quran, there is about 2,000 such roots, approximately. Unique roots, I should say. This is the roots of the ayah. So if I were to sequence Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, sequence the roots of every word, I will get this text, which represents the roots of the words of the ayah. The next column is the number of letters I was talking about. So this is number of letters for every word per the first script, or which is the original script that was written at the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, with his guidance as instructed by Jibreel alayhi salam, on the methodology for writing or the style of writing, and what uniqueness that has, and implications that has for our for today's science in Quran numeric counting. The number of letters for every word in first script are listed here, and the difference between the first script and the Uthmani script is really nothing except that the first script is missing the free hamzas and the hamza of superscript over shahta. So if we want to convert from Uthmani a script to the first script, we just have to ignore the occurrences of the free hamzas and the hamza over the hamza as a superscript on top of the shahta, and then the number of letters will reduce down to equivalent ones by the first script. In the first script, obviously, it doesn't have any dots over the letters or any other hamzas, but from a letter count perspective, the free hamzas and the hamza superscript over shahta are the two types of hamzas that really affect all the counting of letters. Next one is the ayah number of letters in first script, followed by surah number of letters in first script, followed by the accumulative or ACC. Wherever you see ACC, that's accumulative letters in the entire Quran. So in this case, we just accumulate the number of letters in a counter until when we cross over from one surah, like Surah Al-Fatiha up to here, and then we start Surah Al-Baqarah, we continue accumulating and counting the number of letters. And if I scroll all the way down to the Quran in first script, we find that the number of letters in the Quran in first script is 322,604 letters, which is agreed upon by many, many researchers. Okay, the next few columns are a Boolean, just true, false, on whether the number in this column, for example, word number of letters, first script, word letters first script, are they odd or not? So if I have an odd number, I will get a true. If I have an even number, I will get a false. Okay. And the next one is the same but with the ayahs, so representing here. So this ayah is odd and this one is odd, so I will get true for those two ayahs. And then the next one is even, so I will get a false in this case. The odd and even is also has secrets in the Quran by the verse that says Allah swears by the odd and even, or the even and odd often, and that is the washafi wal watr. The next one is similarly but for the surahs, and again the surah column is here, and that's the number of letters in it. In this case, this is Al-Fatiha is an odd number of letters in the Fatiha, and in the Baqarah is also odd, and here we get for the surahs all through throughout for those two surahs. The next one is talking about the in the Quran, the very characteristic aspect of the Quran numerics is divisible by prime numbers, and especially the prime number 19 has special place because there is a verse by itself, وَعَلَيْهَا تِسْعَةَ عَشَرَ, that is mentioning the number 19 particularly. So number 19, especially from among the prime numbers, has special relationship and characteristic in the Quran, and in some ways we would like to explore that relationship. So to enable that, we added these 19 divide by 19 or multiply by 19 type letter columns. In this case, we are looking if the ayah number of letters, which is here, if those are a multiple of 19, and we see that the first one is, second is not, third is not, fourth is not, but the fifth is, first and fifth are multiples of 19, and you see that here, this is true, and these cells are true. And the next one following is similar, divide by 19, but for the surah number of letters. Here it is. Okay, next few columns, I'm just going to go to the right, are the same as what we just discussed on the first script. However, those are for the Uthmani script. So number of letters in a word, number of letters in an ayah, in a surah, and the accumulative number of letters for the Quran for the Uthmani script, followed by are the number of letters are the number of letters in a word odd, number of letters in an ayah odd, number of letters in a surah odd in the Uthmani script. Followed by are the number of letters in an ayah multiple of 19, are the number of letters on the surah multiple of 19. So those are quick kind of measures to use, and you can create your own as you need to. For example, if you want to divide by 17 or 23, and you can create whichever calculation you like in your research. So here, this next set of columns are the letter number in the ayah, and those are accumulative numbers. So in other words, letter number in the ayah, we start with 3, then 7, then 13, then 19. Those are accumulative, and then on the next ayah we reset the counter, so we have a 5, 8, 10, 17, etc. So it's an accumulative number of letters in the ayah, followed by a cumulative number of letters in the surah, and in the next surah we reset the counter, and in the next is the cumulative number of letters in the Quran, and those are all by with Uthmani script, and the few columns following that are the same but relative to the Quran end, relative to the ayah end, or surah end, or Quran end. And so those are kind of the reverse order of these columns. Please note that, for example, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, the meme is the first letter of the last word, because we're doing reverse order, and so if you're counting, I was trying to provide a count of the providing a count of the letter count of every word within that ayah, or within that surah, or within the Quran, and that is useful for purposes of when you're doing searches or order of every word and every letter within the Quran. I want to note something. The letter number in the Quran, since it's a cumulative, and this is Uthmani script, if we go all the way to the end of the table, we will see the number 325,677 letters in the Quran, in the Uthmani script. And that's a statistic that's key and important for the Quran. Okay, the next set of columns are letter number, ayah, first script. So this is the this is again a cumulative, similar to the columns we saw before for the Uthmani script, except now this is repeated for the first script. Here is the cumulative letter count for every ayah, for every surah, and for the entire Quran, Uthmani script again. And then the following columns are the same but in reverse order, relative to the end of the Quran. Okay, the next few columns, are about the ayah number of words, and the surah number of ayahs, and the surah number of words. So how many words per ayah, how many ayahs per surah, how many words per surah. Okay, so those are key statistics as well. Okay, the next few columns are booleans, true, false, about the data that we just saw. For example, I want to know if the ayah word number is odd or even. That's the ayah, not number of words. There's a difference between, I say, ayah number of words versus ayah word number. The ayah word number is as described actually in a different column somewhere else. We have to go back and so here ayah word number is essentially word position, surah, not surah start, but word position ayah start. That's here. And so if I go back to the to these ayah word number, is this odd or even? Obviously, this will just alternate between true, false, true, false, true, false, true, false, all the way to the end. But might be useful if you are just trying to look at the odd words or even words. This is the I misspoke. For sometimes you might get at the end of Al-Fatiha, for example, I got the last word of the Fatiha was odd, and then the first word of Al-Baqarah is also odd. Word number 29, since this has 29 words, that's odd, and then the first word of the next surah is also odd. Okay. The next one is so this is the first ayah, word number 1, and this is ayah number 2, word number 1 also. So you see that that is also true. Next column is the surah, and word number in the surah if it's odd or even. And this is ayah number in the surah if it's odd or even. So for example, we say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's repeated 4 times, one time for every word in that verse or ayah, and so they're all ayah number 1, and therefore they're all true. Ayah number 2, they're all false. Ayah number 3, they're all true, etc. The next one is word number, the ayah word number if it's a multiple of 19. Obviously, we don't have any verse in the Fatiha that is 19 or 38, etc. So they're all false. But in some longer surahs, you might find some that are lengthy like that, and this might be true. The next one is surah word number. If the surah word number is a multiple of 19, and for medium and large size surahs, you will find that can happen, obviously, such as here. In this case. Okay, the next column is the ayah number in the surah if it's a multiple of 19. And the next one is about odd and even. This is the word number odd even. As we mentioned, word number odd even, this will be true false all the way till the end. It's just a continuous pattern of alternating true false all the way till the end. Next one is the ayah number odd? So just a quick note on the word number odd. This is word number is the same as the ID of column in the beginning of the table, and therefore that's just a sequential number, and you will get one number odd followed by one number even, followed by one number odd, one number even, etc. all the way. The next column is the ayah number, and is the ayah number odd, and then is the surah number odd, and then is the Quran word number odd. Okay. Quran word number is odd even, pretty much I think is the same as word number odd. So I apologize. This is the one, Quran word number odd. This is the one that's same as the ID column. This will have this is a kind of the scope of the word numbering here is across the entire Quran. However, this word number being odd is only across the surah. So word number odd. So because we come all the way here up until word number 29, as we mentioned, and then the next one is Alif Lam Mim is word number 1 in Al-Baqarah, and the next one is word number 2 in the Al-Baqarah. So it's a scope of word number odd here. Column is within the surah. Okay. And maybe it should be named surah word number odd. That's what it should be named. I'll take a note for that for the future. Okay. The next one is Quran ayah number odd or even, and the next one is Quran surah number odd or even. So you have all this detailed odd and even numerics that you can use for kind of discovering the ijaz of the Quran in the odd and even paradigm. The next one is are a set of 3 columns for if the word number in the Quran, the scope of these is the entire Quran, and is the word number divisible by 19, the ayah number divisible by 19, or the surah number divisible by 19. So again, multiple of 19 and across the scope of the entire Quran as a means of discovering relationships and numeric ashas. Next one are a column for Fawatih Nuraniya, or the kind of the beginnings of the 29 verses in the Quran. There are 30 occurrences of these Fawatih Nuraniya, and if you want to just look at those, we can just, for example, remove the false and keep the true, and then we will have 30 lines representing al-Fawatih al-Nuraniya, and those are, if we go to the left, here they are, Alif Lam Mim, Alif Lam Mim Sad, Alif Lam Ra, Kaf Ha Ya Ain Sad, and this is the text of these al-Fawatih right here. Okay. All right, and so now the next one is let's unfilter, and the next one is if the word mentioned represents the name of Allah, the name of the Jalala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in this file called database description, I have at the end of it a listing of the variations of the word Allah that we count, and those are 2,704 occurrences in these variations of the word Allah. And those are the key columns. Now, the next set of columns are about Jummal, and the Jummal, there are multiple types of Jummal that are used both for the Osmani script and the first script. If I go to the file called structure, database structure, and up on top we will find a listing of these Jummal types, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7. That's 11 types of jumals. Each one has been analyzed for both the Osmani script and the first script. And the analysis covers the calculation of the Jumal value, or the numeric value of the letters of each word it is for every word, for every ayah, every surah, and the entire Quran. Let's just kind of quickly describe each type. Jumal 400 and Jumal 5 are very much related. We assign a number from 1 to 1000 to every letter in a sequence 1 through 10, then 20 through 100, then 200 through 1000. So 1, 2, 3 to 10, 20, 30, 40 to 100, 200, 300, 400, all the way to 1000. And this is kind of a paradigm of numeric values added to the letters that was present even before the Islam time with the Arab of the Mecca and in Hijaz. So the Jumal value is essentially assigning this letter value, a numeric value, to each of the letters, and then calculating the numeric value of the word, or the verse, or the entire surah, or the Quran for that sake. The only difference between Jumal 400 and Jumal 5 is the letter Ta al-marbuta. That's the only difference. And in the case of Jumal 400, we use numeric value 400 for the Ta al-marbuta to be the same as the Ta al-maftuha. And in the Jumal 5, we use the value 5 for the Ta al-marbuta to be the same as the Ha, which is before, without dotting, the dotted script. In other words, the first script, the Ta al-marbuta, would look like a Ha. The first script does not have the Hamza superscript, and it does not have the free Hamza. Okay, but it has the rest of the letters. The Osmani scripts have all of these, and the Hamza in general is given the same value as the Alif, except when it looks like there is a Hamza on top of a Alif Maqsura. This looks like a Ya, so it's, and same as the Alif Maqsura looks like a Ya, so it's given the value of a Ya. The Hamza on top of a Waw looks like a Waw, and so it's given the value of a Waw. So those are generally the rules of the how we give these letters values. The rest of the letters are all given a value from 1 to 1000, as I mentioned. Now, for a sequence of letters, this Jumal value gives us assigns each letter a value 1 through 28 based on its a sequence of occurrence in the Quran. So Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So we start with Bismi, Ba, Sin, Mim, Alif, Lam, Ha, Ra, Ha, Nun, and those are the sequence of letters per their occurrence in the Quran. And the next one is the Jumal based on the frequency of the letter occurrence. So the most occurring or recurring letter is the Alif, followed by the Lam, followed by the Nun, then Mim, Ya, Waw, Ha, etc. And so we assign Alif number 1, Lam number 2, Nun number 3, Mim number 4, etc. And so it just gives us, it's another way to look at the frequency of letter occurrence as a means of creating a Jumal value. The next 7 are all a new type of jumals based what we call termis, and there are 3 types of termis, 1, 2, and 3, and then the sum or combination of these 3, such as 1 and 2 together, or 1 and 3, or 2 plus 3, or the termis of all 3 together, 1, 2 plus 2 plus 3. And those new termis were discovered by Mr. Atif Ali Salibi, who authored a book called Asra al-Hasibin and the the big secrets of the Quran miracles, Al-Ijaz al-Kabir في القرآن الكريم. And we essentially calculated the value for every word, every ayah, surah, and the Quran using these termis jumal values. Okay, I should say that a few notes that essentially the alif khunjariya, which is pronounced but not written as an alif, has no numeric value, except when it falls on what we call a share, which is kind of the alif maqsura that is connected. Then in that occurrence, when there is a letter under it, that the value of that letter is counted, and the alif al-maqsura as always is given the value of the ya. Okay, in this file we also detail the total sum value of the whole jumal for each type, for the Quran in Uthmani script and in first script. And then we detail down every field in the database or table and its actual the listing of its description. How is that field? What is the data content of that field? So it's an important file called database structure, available for download as well in that general folder. Okay, so now, as I mentioned, for the Uthmani script, here is the jumal for every word, every ayah, every surah, and the accumulative for the Quran. We add a little bit more extras details for jumal 400 and jumal 5, especially. We add whether the word is jumal 400 of the word is odd or even, the ayah jumal 400 is odd or even, or the surah jumal 400 is odd or even. And similarly, whether that jumal 400 is for the word is divisible by 19 or a multiple of 19. If the ayah jumal 400 is a multiple of 19, of the surah jumal 400 is a multiple of 19. The next, we do the same, but for the first script. And then following that with the jumal 5 for word, ayah, surah, and Quran, and whether they're odd or even for the word, ayah, and surah, and then whether they're multiple of 19 for the word, ayah, and surah. And then we do the same for jumal 5, but for first script. Again, the jumal 5 for first script for the word, ayah, and surah, and the accumulative for the Quran. And then we start a new jumal table for the sequence type, jumal type. We do that for the word, ayah, surah, and the Quran. For the Quran is accumulative. In other words, for every word value, jumal value, we add it here as well. And then we do the same for the word for the first script, as we see here. Much the same, we do the same for the frequency type jumal value, for the word, ayah, surah, and Quran accumulative for Uthmani script and for the first script. Okay, now the next step is we look for the occurrence of number of occurrences of the exact surahs, and I will follow that in the next video shortly.